I'm here with Ingalill Wahlroos-Ritter, FAIA, Dean at Woodbury School of Architecture. She's an architect and educator specializing in the building envelope. Ingalill Wahlroos-Ritter currently serves as Dean of Woodbury School of Architecture, is Director of, is it WUHO?
That's correct.
Okay, Gallery, and co-principal of the Architecture Forum, is it WROAD?
WROAD.
WROAD, okay. Elevated to fellow in 2018. She is the recipient of 2016 AIA California Council Educator Award, was honored in 2018 with the AIA LA Presidential Educator of the Year Award, and recognized by Design Intelligence as one of the nation's most admired educators in architecture and design in 2018. Welcome, Ingalill.
Thank you, Michelle. It's nice to be here.
Thank you for agreeing to do the interview, and here are the questions. What are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
So I grew up in Finland, in Helsinki. So I have to say that was probably my first recollection and understanding that there was such a thing as an architect. So in Finland, a tiny country, less than 8 million people, Alvar Aalto is a hero. And so growing up and being able to go to places that had been designed by Alvar Aalto was pretty remarkable. And that's probably my first recollection. Yeah. When we moved to Los Angeles, I remember looking for something similar that would inspire. And I have said this before, and I will say it again. It's slightly embarrassing, but in junior high, we moved here when I was about 14. I was struck by the Bonaventure Hotel had just been built in Los Angeles, and that really stood out for me as a building that was really different from all the other buildings around it. And it is to this day still one of my favorite buildings here in Los Angeles.
When I first went to Cal Poly Pomona in 1984, like that's what everybody let's go to Los Angeles and see the Bonaventure, and I was like, what is that? Because it's just totally bizarre. And in my mind, I was thinking, oh, okay, it's kind of this 70s thing or something, or kind of like the spaceship, but I mean, of course, you look at things and you're like, oh yeah, I mean, you can understand, as you get older, you can understand the merits of a lot of different architecture, and yeah.
It doesn't work urbanistically, and I certainly understand the drawbacks. I mean, lifting up these skywalks, sucking away the energy from the street. I get it. But you walk into that atrium space, or you sit in those pods and have a cocktail, and it really feels like a destination. You can go all the way up to the top and look out over the city. And I always take my visitors from out of town to the Bonaventure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the elevators. I mean, the elevators, by themselves are just
exactly.
I've been to Helsinki when I studied in Denmark, so that's quite a city there's probably a marked contrast between Helsinki and LA at the time, because
you can imagine as a 14-year-old moving from Helsinki to the San Fernando Valley. So it was from a very dense, urban condition where we lived in an apartment and we walked to school, and that was in another sort of urban building and surrounded by the ocean, so it was incredibly beautiful. And then coming to the sprawling valley, and I went to Van Nuys High School and Granada Hills High School.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's my German husband, who is always struck by the fact that schools in Los Angeles look like prisons with their chain link fence and the concrete tarmacs. And so it was a marked contrast, and I will, that I will always carry with me, the sort of this dichotomy between these two radically different environments.
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and then we moved to San Diego, after high school, and then to LA, and a totally different, right? In Pittsburgh, people don't drive. I mean, they won't get their driver's license. And then I moved to the West Coast, and like everybody's like drives everywhere. You don't use public transportation. I mean, it was like, it's different now, but in the early 80s, that was what it was.
Exactly.
So, what are 3 classic buildings that you like and why?
Oh my gosh. So I own and live in a dingbat. So, and the dingbat is this funny vernacular typology that I think really beautifully symbolizes LA, sort of parking, living stacked on each other. So I see these, top 10 buildings in Los Angeles lists all the time. And Chris Hawthorne has a really great one where he took his mother-in-law and he had to think about, in one day, traveling along the freeway, what places would you go? So I advise everybody to go look at it, because it really, had some really wonderful, not just iconic buildings, but a very thoughtful list that actually included a lot of things. So I can't replicate that perfection. I would say Los Angeles Olympics, 1984 would be one of them. And I had just moved here. So this was Deborah Sussman and Jurdy. I think it's a really Los Angeles blend of, it's a blend of design disciplines, so it's not conventional architecture, but it's wayfinding and color and branding and logos and multiple venues all having to be knit together. So I think that's a really important building and project for Los Angeles. There's still little bits of it, that you could find throughout Los Angeles. Certainly when you go, for example, to the stadium over by USC.
Yes,
I would Grand Central Market is another one, built in 1917. I think, it really, truly, it's a sort of a melting pot within a melting pot, this sort of diverse culinary experience. And I think this sort of idea of the culinary experience is so Los Angeles, think about food trucks, think about architecture designed restaurants. I just think that there's a real wonderful marriage to be had between eating and being in these wonderful architectural spaces in this wonderful city of ours. So I would say that's my number 2. And maybe my number 3 would be, I would tout, we have the Julius Schulman Institute here, and I wouldn't be able to pick one, but this notion of the mid-century modern house and all those photographs that Julius took and that really put Southern California on the map for architecture. Yeah. And I think that they're really, they were all about design innovation, and it gave Southern California an iconic look, and it, that's still being replicated across the world. I took students to New Zealand a couple of years ago, and I was struck by how they were still referring to the 1950s mid-century modern architecture in their, single family residential models. And I just thought that was super interesting, that it's resonated for so long and such a powerful image for so many people. Yeah. So those would be my 3.
Okay. What do you like about being an architect?
I like that every day is completely different. You never know the day. And I think it's unique to the profession. And I think it's because we are asked to synthesize not just different strands of information, but different ways of thinking. So I think that that's what I like best about being an architect, that on certain days I have to act like a true designer, thinking up creative ideas. Other days I have to act like a studio coordinator, sometimes in the classroom, but even also in our office. Now I'm now teaching design, so there's always an element of didactic, sort of having to translate and communicate ideas. Yeah. Sometimes I have to, I'm going to the building department. Now I have a completely different mindset, a completely different vocabulary, completely different value system. So, communicating with contractors, communicating with engineers, communicating with clients. I just love that aspect of architecture. Yeah. And so I would say that's, I just get so, enriched by thinking. And I feel like it's difficult to articulate and explain that to people in a way that I think that could really increase the value of what we do as architects. And I vehemently believe that there are so many opportunities that architects could bring value to projects where we're not at the table. And if there's a life goal of mine, it would be to open up more doors and opportunities for architects to participate in these rich public conversations. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think that we have a good way of thinking and coming up with multiple solutions to one problem. And I think that that's very valuable in a lot of different, you know, issues relating to housing or, you know, the built environment, but then other things that aren't so much the built environment, you know, that we could have, that we should be at the table, you know, in policy making and a lot of other things where, you know, I mean, I know, you know, they talk about how, oh, architecture is going to be dead. And I'm like, really? I said, I think that like architecture, it's the design process can be carried out in a lot of different ways, you know, in the world without it being, you know, so much architecture, right? And building, you know, the process can be used in many different ways.
Yeah, so there was Chris, I keep referring to him, but Chris Hawthorne did an interview with me when I took over as dean here at Woodbury School of Architecture, and the quote he used for the headline was, "Architecture education will be the law degree of the 21st century." And it was funny having to explain, you know, people are like, oh, what did you mean by that? And what I meant by that is that, you know, there was a time when everybody got a law degree, not necessarily to practice law, but to open doors for them. And that's exactly what I meant, that I feel like the education of an architect opens doors that we can't even begin to imagine. And I think about, you know, startups or, you know, the tech industry or, you know, Amazon, Google, City Hall, you know, there's a lot of industries where the way that we think and the way that we learn and educate ourselves has so much value. And I think that we as a profession, and certainly the AIA, and I'm very involved with the AIA, how do we communicate that? I think architects, we get it. We need to find a way, especially here in the United States, because I do think it's different in Europe, that, but I do think that we need to find a way to explain exactly what you were saying, that we bring value beyond just the building. And it's not valuing the building, because believe me, as an architect, you know, I'm a licensed architect, I've built buildings, but, you know, which is, boy, hard enough. But, you know, that kind of thinking can be then translated to so many other opportunities. And that's what I love about being an educator, because I can help students imagine what are the opportunities open for you. And, you know, whether it's entertainment, whether it's, you know, patenting ideas, whether it's going into, you know, specification writing or law or city hall and, you know, working for the building, you know, so there's just this broad array of opportunities. And it's so fun to be part of that journey with all the students that come through here at Woodbury.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the design process, I mean, this thing where we come up with one concept, you know, or many concepts, and we come up with the concept, then we have, you know, multiple solutions for a design, and then constantly going over things and revising things as we move along and then finally, when even if it is a built space, you know, that built space, you know, is something that might be a little bit different from what the concept or even the initial things, from all of the different factors that you see. And I think that that's kind of a good thing. I mean, I think that design process is good for, you know, a lot of it's, you know, a lot of students, they want this right or wrong answer for things all the time, you know, and design, you know, kind of say, well, design isn't like that. You know, it's like, you're not going to come up with the right answer or the wrong answer for something, you know. I mean, it might not work as well in the way that you're doing it, but it's still, and it's this being able to like make a mistake and then you're still finding another solution for it and moving on in that process. So.
Right.
So what would you like to say about the future of architecture?
I feel like I just said that.
Oh, so that was
so
what it's like about being an architect.
Yeah, and let me just extrapolate a little bit that, you know, we, So here at Woodbury, we just did a sort of internal strategic plan, and we talk about, so in short, we're envisioning the future of practice.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about that is that it does two things. Number one, I think it's speculative. What are the changing roles that the architecture will have in the future? And I think those roles are associated with different skill sets and different tool sets. And I'm happy to talk about those because my background is actually in technology. Okay. But so that's one strand, that there's this sort of speculative, how can the architect's role change? And it's in response to various other changes, but also continuing that conversation that we were just having, being more involved in projects for which we're particularly well suited to address. Mm-hmm. But I think when we say that we're envisioning the future of practice, it's also reaffirming a commitment to practice itself. And I think that, we all feel an obligation here at Woodbury. We're really, our students are very, very accomplished, and they are hitting the ground running when they leave Woodbury. And I think it's, understanding that there is this is the existing condition in careers, whether it's interiors, architecture, real estate. Those are the three disciplines in which that we're educating. And so, for example, in our real estate development program, over 60% of our alumni are building the projects that they're dreaming of as students. So think about it. They're taking a one-year post-professional real estate development course, and then they're building those projects, and over 60% of them are building them. I mean, what more demonstration do you need of the sort of, the value of that education? Mm-hmm. And the same thing with our interior program. Our students are going in and making incredible progress in terms of thinking about what career in interiors might be. And then, of course, our IPAL program, which is the Integrated Path to Architecture Licensure program, where our students, while they're students, are taking the exam. And so this, getting back to this, the future of practice, and so that's sort of responding to your question. There's the speculative, what is the changing role of the architect, but also a reaffirmation of the commitment to the practice of architecture, the professional practice of architecture.
So is there anything else you'd like to say to wrap it up? I know we have the housing forum that's coming up. The moderator of the design, the ideation. Is it ideation?
Yeah. I mean, there's one more thing I wanted to say, and we're a majority minority institution, and this conversation is huge right now in architecture. It has to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'm a woman. As I've said, I was in the technical field background. My background is in actually facades, and so I know what to be the only woman in a room is very lonely. But my students are, they're over 70% of them are minority students, and I believe to my core that diversity is not simply a numbers game. That it will bring, when our profession becomes more diverse, it will take on more of these relevant issues that we were talking about earlier, that diversifying the profession will broaden the profession, and not broaden it in a thinning way, but enrichen the conversation in terms of the types of projects that we can engage in, give us credibility in wading into these conversations, and really sort of reaffirming the value of our profession. And we cannot do that until we take seriously this issue of equity and diversity.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's, and it's hard to be the person that's saying on the committees, I want to see more women. And it's hard to it's hard in these things to say, I want to see more women. And then I just hear, well, but we want them to be good designers. We want that. It's like there's still plenty of women. There's still plenty of other things that are in the profession that we can put on these different lectures and these different forums. I mean, I believe that. I think the representation, it really has to be. I mean, California, it's like we're a diverse population. And when you look at architecture right now, I don't think that architecture so much, I think we're getting there. In California, I think we're probably much more diverse than in some of the other states. Yeah, I think that the more that the architects become a representation of the population, I think that we're probably going to have, some really, a great future out there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think those kind of comments that you were referring to before are frankly, insulting, and of course, design acumen and capability shouldn't be compromised, and
yes.
And this is the thing and this is what you learn as an educator, that society is biased, that there are biases that are inherent, and every one of us carry them with us. And
yes.
And part of educating people, that's what it means to be an educated person, is to begin to question and to wonder about those measuring sticks, and it's not diminishing, but it's enriching, and a measuring stick, there's different ways of measuring things, and I think that people need to understand and realize that in a greater way. I believe that good design is a human right, and I think that that's what we do as architects, that we have the power to change, to use architecture and the design of the built environment to affect culture and society, and that's where the potential of what we do, really becomes such a vital part of people's lives. And I think that that's the message that we architects just need to continue to hammer away, that we will improve, the culture and society. Those things will come with good architecture. Those other parts will, the life will be better for everybody.
Exactly. Not saying that we can cure, not saying that we can cure all the ills of society with architecture, but I think that we can try to at least address certain issues, and I think my blog is I've never met a woman architect before, and then people are like, I've never met a woman architect before. And I said, yeah. And they're like, but aren't you a woman architect? I'm like, I know, that's the joke, right? That like when I meet people and I say I'm an architect, they say, oh, I've never met a woman architect before. And I said, that's kind of the joke. I said, meanwhile, it's like there's a ton of us out there, right? It's just like, we're just not always saying, hey, I'm an architect, even, right? I don't know how you are with your kids, but like when I had my kids in school, it's like I wouldn't tell people like what I did. And then I just started one day, I said, you know what? I'm just going to tell everybody that I am an architect. Like I'm just going to put it out there. It's like, yes, I'm an architect. They're like, wow. But even in the store the other day when I said that I was an architect, and I kind of like, I laughed about this with Marilyn, and they were like, really? I thought like you seem like more outgoing. Like I didn't think architects were outgoing, or I didn't think, So yes, we're out there, and there's a lot of, there's many different types of architects that that we are, and different colored hair, different, right? Everybody's.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else?
No.
Oh, okay, well, Ingalill, it was nice talking with you, and I'll see you on March 29th in Newport Beach.
I look forward to it. Lovely.
Yes, I look forward to it also.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.